assisted dying, Poundland problems, and Roger who? Welcome to Mark and Pete. We're two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's our first thought for today.
The ultimate choice. Life is something that should be dignifying, though terminal illness is never forgiving. But when law allows for assisted dying, what about assisted living? Yes, isn't it remarkable that for the first time in British history, MPs have approved a bill which will pave the way for a huge social change in Britain, primarily giving terminally ill adults in England and in Wales the right to end their own lives. Now, this bill was backed by 314 votes to 291 against, which will now go to the House of Lords, and this will go through further scrutiny. Now, Mr. Pete, I ask you, this was a very tight vote, an emotionally charged debate as well, but what's your view on the proposed bill so that people who are potentially deemed to fit this category can actually end their own lives?
Well, I think what we're looking at in that it's assisted dying is actually something a little different from how it's characterised. In the bill, it's characterised as people choosing to die. Now, of course, that is what they mean by it. And from what I've seen of the debate, I believe the many active participants in the debate who are on the side of the bill passing genuinely believe this, that it's trying to help people. But what it actually is, assisted dying is actually killing. And we have a word for that, which is murder. And the Bible says very clearly, Exodus 20 verse 13 is one of the two places it says it, you shall not murder. And so Christians, many Christians are against this. Of course, some Christians are then swayed by the claim, the petitioning your empathy or your love for people to not want them to suffer at the end of their lives. Now, most people, I think, do empathise with that. I mean, I can see the emotional force of that argument, but when it comes to making decisions in a legislature, in the House of Commons, and hopefully in the House of Lords when it goes to them, well, we genuinely need people to these people, the MPs and then those in the House of Lords, to be more reflective, to be more hard-minded, to be actually look at the facts, don't we? Rather than just using emotion.
Well, I think emotion is probably part of the problem here. So let's take some perspectives. Now, not surprising that many MPs who were debating this in the chambers of the House of Commons were very much divided. Ultimately, of course, the bill did go through and will go to the House of Lords. We'll come on to that stage in a minute, but let's look at the two arguments. One particular supporter of this bill was Dame Esther Ranson. She's a well-known and established TV presenter, started her career in the late 60s and became to prominence with That's Life in the 1970s. But what she said about this was a huge positive difference, protecting millions of terminally ill patients and their families from the agony and loss of dignity created by a bad death. And she then went on to say, thank you, Parliament. Now, interestingly, in complete contrast, Baroness and former Paralympian Tanni Gray-Thompson said that she had heard from disabled people who are absolutely terrified about the bill.
Yes.
She went on to say, who will get a vote on the bill in the Lords, said she, would basically to sort of think about making it as tight as possible to ensure that people could not be coerced. And this is now where I think that the issue is, because what is a terminally ill person? There are many variations if you think about the situation of health and how a doctor may determine somebody's state of mind, state of body. The other factor is that how can you really be 100% certain when somebody's going to die, irrespective of their particular condition. There have been many examples of people who have been given only 6 months to live, and they've gone on to have a fruitful another 2 to 3 years. Yes, meaning, true. Had the individual had basically taken their own life, or assisted, shall we say, that would have meant that those individuals would have not have been able to fulfill their full course of life in a natural sense. So here's the point here which is, and this is what I think is going to happen. I think there's going to be yet another fierce debate, but this time, of course, it's going to be in the House of Lords. What will they come to a conclusion on? I don't know. But one of the things that I think that many people are conscious of is having the right safety mechanisms. There's something else I want to highlight here, because typically in order to get this through, you have to have a certain amount of doctors who need to verify and validate that the person has reached that point of a terminally ill state. You also have to have other individuals involved depending on their mental state. But surely this contradicts the Hippocratic Oath. I mean, to me, the whole point, if you're a doctor, if you're forced by law to go through this process, you're really countering the whole point of your objective, which is to keep people alive, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it is. And I've seen quite a few comments. This isn't a scientific survey. I've seen comments on Twitter, on x.com, from doctors saying they personally are not going to assist any dying. So they would refuse treatment, if you like. I don't know what happens then. It depends on the numbers who actually refuse to take part, doesn't it? But the House of Lords at this stage, of course, you mentioned it going to the House of Lords, they consider amendments to the bill, and then it goes back to the Commons, doesn't it? So they're not going to stop it. Oh, it's very unlikely. They just don't these days. If the Commons passes it, they don't stop it, but they amend it. And then it goes to royal assent, which is just a formality. The King isn't going to be putting the kibosh on it. So we're really dependent on there being, as you mentioned, Mr. Mark, very stringent amendments to make sure that it's very, very difficult to do this, to make sure that there isn't what's sometimes called the slippery slope. You start off thinking, well, it's only with people who are really going to suffer, then it ends up, well, you know, they make it's upsetting to them because it's costing their children lots of money to keep them alive. You know, that's the sort of far end in it, isn't it? Of it, isn't it? I mean, so I think the slippery slope is one of the main problems here. Lots of studies have been done on this. Ethics bodies, you know, religious and secular, have over the years come to the conclusion it's too dangerous. And yet this seems to have been bypassed, as far as I can tell in the debate in the Commons, by emotion. And as I was saying at the start of our discussion here, but just one other thing that I referred to, you shall not murder, saying that actually you're saying there's an exception to this being murder. Now there are exceptions of calling. There were times when the Bible and most ethicists would say you can kill, like for example, so in some societies execution is allowed, and execution of certain people, lawbreakers of certain sorts, is in the Old Testament in the Bible. There were sins or certain ways of breaking the law that resulted in being killed. In fact, quite a few of them. But these and these days, it's more often that you would say a reason for being able to kill someone would be self-defense, or if you were at war, you'd be killing other people's soldiers. So there are exceptions. But is this really an exception that could be allowable? Is it in fact murder? Because, if it's not an acceptable reason, then you're a Christian would argue it's against God's law. So here's one verse, Psalm 139, verse 16. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. God has a plan for your life, this is sort of intimating. And the last pages have been torn out if you're going to be killed before your time.
Yes, it's a path of peril, in my view. I think that what this is potentially going to do, I can almost anticipate, and I can see the headlines now, error around the assisted dying scenario, where basically patients were either coerced or mistakes were made, and it's almost inevitable that it's going to happen. Now, some people will say, no, that's the reason for having these mechanisms in place. No, I disagree. I think that once you take that route, then you will almost certainly more likely to make a mistake, as opposed to trying to aid the person who has a terminally ill condition and to make their last few days more comfortable and easier for them. Now, there's a number of reasons for this. As you know, there's many hospices around this country and indeed around the world who do an exceptional job with palliative care. The medical techniques are much better. The easing of pain is much better. They're very mindful, both in terms of the physical side, but the emotional side, etc. They do an exceptional job. You take that away from them, what are you left with? Now, to me, this is where I think that really, to your point, I think if you are in that measure of really it's not assisted dying, I think it is killing. And I think it'd be interesting to see what our listeners think about this. Well, let's move on to another subject, which is something that might be hitting our pocket. Not sound as a pound. A pound is round and mainly sound, with a sovereign head that is royally crowned, unless it falls and goes to the ground, and then the pound may not be found. Well, it just so happens that the budget, retailer Poundland has said it will be closing 68 stores around the United Kingdom as part of the turnaround plan. But unfortunately, that means more than 1,000 jobs are at risk. Once again, Mr. Pete, it seems that the retail high street is struggling. Now, what's interesting is at a time when the economy was really bad 10, 15 years ago, these type of stores prospered. I can tell you why I think that they're struggling today, but in your opinion, what's your view on the way that Poundland has found itself in desperate straits?
Well, I'm interested by why these shops work, why they're successful. The claim you can get everything for a pound is one of the main reasons, in that it's a very simple marketing strategy. It's you think you're saving money by going and buying more stuff. Of course, it could be that you just go there to buy vital stuff, but I don't think that's the strategy. I think it's only a pound, so why don't I come and spend your extra stuff here? That's the way that I read it. But my reading on it is this. It was a clever way, however you read it, of getting people into the store by saying everything's worth a pound. And several chains of stores took advantage of this, didn't they? But the Bible says this about such clever techniques. This is Proverbs 23 verse 4. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. It doesn't say this in Proverbs, but I would add, especially if your margins are really tight.
Well, exactly. Now, one of the reasons why the store Poundland, as well as many other sort of budget shops, have struggled isn't so much of the fact that the environment isn't right, because we know the economy is not great. It's the fact that the following. First of all, 20 years ago, leases were actually a lot cheaper. Whereas landlords now are having to sort of find, ways of helping stores. But the fact is that costs have gone up. The second thing is, which is probably the most important one, which is the supply chain. At one time, companies like Poundland, Poundworld, Pound Stretcher, and anybody else that had a pound in their name basically could buy goods from China, ship them through quickly and easily in volume, and get them out in bulk. And of course, the public bought it. But of course, we're in a different world. The social, political, geopolitical matters with China have changed, and the reliance on China has been under great scrutiny. The supply chain has been disrupted, so goods, materials, etc., has got very, very expensive. And of course, obviously, what that means is your margins are even tighter. So if you're reliant on volume and you don't have as many stores, or you just cannot push those goods through, that's the other thing. Now, the other point is, which I think is really what you sort of indicated,
Yeah.
which I think that the consumer has woken up to the fact that a lot of the goods aren't really what they need. Because even though there are some things where you might be able to save a few pennies on one or two goods from buying them from other stores, going in there and thinking that, buying some strange toy or something else that you didn't really need, probably appealed, 10, 20 years ago when these type of stores, popped up. Whereas now I think that the consumers got wise to the technique. So in many ways, should we say the business model has changed? And that means that they haven't changed and adapted, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I don't know. This is a closing comment, but I don't know how you assess this. It would need some real targeted surveys, questionnaires. Could it be something to do also with the culture? Because such shops now seem extremely seedy. The same thing is done online, and people think it's cool, and they have lots of Amazon and eBay packages arrive. But in the high street, it seems. I mean, the same thing is done as in selling cheap rubbish, is what I read, and the same thing done on the high street seems very seedy, and somehow, you're making yourself look bad by going in there. I wonder if that cultural change.
That was criticism at the time when they first popped up, and I don't think that the consumer was as concerned about that. But yes, there's always that brand tag, the tarnished brand issue.
Yes.
But I think that even today, I think that's less of an issue. If you haven't got many pounds in your pocket, what you're trying to do is to find goods that you really need. So whether that be food, whether it's clothing, or whatever it is that you think that you need to serve your needs. But I come back to the fact that the business model has changed. And so at the back end of things, from the warehousing through to the supply chain to how ships turn up at the dock, all of that has changed quite dramatically. And it will be interesting to see whether they can survive. So they've cut back dramatically. But you see, that's the other thing. Of course, even though that we've seen that the retail landscape has been dying for quite some decades now, it's accelerated in the last few years worse than ever before. So I think that's another factor.
It'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see whether other brands, which are which owe their success due to their perceived cheapness, will disappear or have difficulty as well. Think of just to name one. Apologies to the brand, maybe they're doing great, but Primark selling clothes. People used to say something like, the joke used to be, well, if you shop at Poundland, you're the sort of person that says, well, you only shop at Primark for the label. It's that which is a ludicrous overstatement, but Primark sells itself on cheapness. Will that go to the wall as well? I don't know.
Who knows? We'll see.
Watch the space.
There then. Let's talk about who's who and what is about night and day. Yes, it's all about my regeneration. Who's who in the who howls and hollers and hums? For he who has a knighthood now sings with tonsils that bang like drums. Well, yes. Congratulations, Sir Roger Daltrey. Yes, the man who said that his generation would die before he got old. Well, that never. What happened there, Roger? Well, let's be honest, Roger, Sir Roger, we should say, well known for his antics in the 1960s as part of the mod groups. Yes, they were very much on stage, smashing up their guitars, rebellious as they were. And the man went on and did some incredible charity work. He's raised millions of pounds for worthy causes, and quite rightly that he's now been recognised. Mr. Pete, I ask you, were you a fan of The Who? And you know who Roger Daltrey really is?
Well, I suppose it's a sort of mark of his success and fame that I do know who he is, because, I'm not, as a regular listeners also know, I'm not a great fan of pop music, even though virtually all our most successful episodes on here on Mark and Pete, thousands and thousands of listens about pop music, but that just goes to show. But no, I'm not a particular fan of pop music in any of its forms. but I know who he is. I know who he is, you might say, to continue the pun. And I know the thing, hope I die before I get old, and all that sort of thing. And his famous stutter in the singing. But, he's now gone from that to being a knight of the realm. It's a bit of a switch around. But my take on it is that just trying to put myself in his position, which you may say is difficult because, although we're almost identical in terms of talent and we could be twins, possibly. I can say that sort of thing on radio. But well, not the singing part, but yes.
I don't know.
He has made him. He managed to get great fame at an early age. Of course, he's coming to me late in life through Mark and Pete. But he got famous for his great performances and through his work with his band and all this sort of thing. What would I do with it were I in that position? What would be the best thing to do? Well, to try and help others. Well, he set up a business, didn't he?
Oh, yes.
With a fish farm somewhere. And
yes, he did.
And he worked. Now, I believe it was the Teenage Cancer Trust that he worked with. Maybe there were other charities as well.
Yeah.
So he's done something valuable he's used, let me put it as a complete sentence. He's used the fame that he accrued to do something genuinely valuable in terms of charity work and building up a business, which is also contributes to society. So if anyone deserves a knighthood, he does. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I agree. I mean, I will say that even just on the musical front, from basically pioneering in many ways the sort of the mod sound of the 60s. Of course, they went on to greater success with Tommy and the film, and of course the album in the 70s, and all the way through in different guises as the band members changed. But the fact of the matter is, he had a very, very distinctive vocal sound. What was often, I must admit, that anyone who was a technical sound engineer in the background must have worried desperately with swinging the microphone around in the air. Yes, be careful about where that may have landed.
Yes.
But the point is that he was very distinctive, but also, to your point, I think that as an individual he speaks very, very well about worthy causes. And even though that most people will probably remember him for his stage performances, I think that he's reached that point in life where he recognizes that his influence isn't just about a younger generation, it's a generation that can contribute. So I think really we've sort of followed a theme here, haven't we? It's all about life, it's all about what you do with it. And I'd be interested to see what our listeners think about that.
Yes, I'll just close with another Bible verse, as I've been peppering our discussion with them. This is Mark chapter 8, verse 36. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? That's when you think about life, it may be short, may get even shorter if this assisted dying bill goes through without any really tight amendments. But for your time here, make sure you make the best of it in helping others, because that'll give meaning and purpose to your life. Well, that's a thought, and we have various thoughts throughout this show. Let us know what you think. Get in touch with us. Go to markandpete.com. Make sure you're subscribed. You can leave a comment on this, and in fact, every episode. Or if you're listening to this on x.com, just leave a comment there. We'll be sure to see it. Thanks very much for listening. For Mark and myself, it's goodbye for this time. Catch you next time.